Hello, Anna. Nice to see you. How are you?
Hi, Claudia. I'm very well. Thank you.
Good to have you on, Anna. So, Anna, you're a partner and the head of international arbitration at Allen Overy in Germany. So, this blog is called Negotiation in Action because inevitably, with the current situation, a lot of negotiations are happening in all kinds of fields. Can you share a bit about what's happening in the space of international arbitration at the moment? What some of the negotiations and some of the challenges are?
Yes, certainly. So I think there's two main issues. One is for the arbitrations that are currently ongoing, where nobody really knows what to do about the physical hearings that are scheduled. And there's essentially two main propositions. The one is we're going to postpone indefinitely, and the other is we're going to try and do it virtually. And I think the at least in my personal from my personal perspective, the better arguments speak for actually holding the hearings virtually, because I think the technicalities are up to date. They work. Um, I've just arbitrated sessions at the virtual Vismut, and the software is working amazingly well. Just like we're now talking on Zoom, which is working amazingly well. There's Microsoft Teams, there's WebEx, you name it. I think the technical possibilities are there. I think the only thing that takes people still or takes people another to agree to these issues is that you always have a feeling you're not close enough to the witness, to the tribunal. You don't have the personal experience, and I can see that argument. But I think if the alternative is to postpone hearings indefinitely because nobody knows when and to what extent who is able to travel where, then I think the better proposition would be just to try and do these hearings virtually. So that's the one issue in arbitration that I see. And the other thing is that obviously, as a litigation arbitration partner, everybody has been looking into issues like force majeure and material adverse change clauses, and going back to jurisprudence of the Federal Supreme Court from 1952, following the Second World War, which is crazy enough. And what I think is fascinating, as horrible as it is, that everybody is in the same situation, no matter where you look,
Mm.
no matter whom you talk to, where on earth, they all are grappling with the same issues. But potentially the law leads to different answers depending on the jurisdiction you're in. So from our arbitration litigation perspective, I think choice of law clauses will be very, very important, and mandatory provisions will play a major role going forward.
Mm. So it sounds with everything you're saying, sounds like there might be quite some change that this is bringing for arbitration, for international arbitration at large. Can you give a bit of an insight of how you think this current situation with the challenges of virtual hearings and these extra clauses, how this might influence the way we do international arbitration in the future, or the way we set up our contracts to be prepared for these things in the future?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, the ICC has just published a revised force majeure and hardship clause based on this crisis. So I think everybody is kind of looking at their contract clauses and seeing whether and to what extent they need adaptation going forward, because I think everybody is aware that this might not go away as fast as we would want it to, and everybody is also aware that it might be happening again. So I think there needs to be preparation for that scenario. I think one main thing that I would say is that what makes the situation so difficult is that everybody has been affected by a risk that nobody is responsible for.
Mm.
So essentially, usually with the contractual risk allocation, you can kind of also advise your clients, well, you overtook that contractual risk, so it might be on you, um, and you might lose the case. Currently, you can't really advise anything because everybody has been affected by the risk, but for potentially suppliers who actually overtook the obligation to, in any way and under all conditions, deliver. But other than that, I think there's room to argue on both sides. And that makes the negotiation so complicated, because if you can't really estimate an outcome,
Mm.
how are you what are you willing to give in order to get certainty? But if you don't know how uncertain the situation is for you, that makes it very, very complicated. And I think as regards the second prong of your question in relation to how our more use of technology going forward, because I think just by doing every day, people get accustomed to using these wonderful tools. And now I lost you.
Mm.
Are you still there?
Well, I can still hear you.
Yeah, wonderful. My computer just logged me out, but I'll just listen and you
Ah.
ask, and I'll log back on, and
Okay, now I
I'll be
can
back.
still hear and see you very well.
There you are.
So the challenge, so what I'm hearing you say is that part of the challenge in negotiations is that there's so much uncertainty and that we have not even a vague framework of what are the boundaries and what are the
Yeah.
possibilities, what are the responsibilities. No one's really responsible for this. So the tricky question, I guess, is how do you go about it? If you are, for contracts that are already in place now and you are being asked to renegotiate, how would you go about it? Do you have any recommendations of how people could ensure that
I
they're
think Well, I think currently, I think the main, apart from securing your cash flow, yeah, and applying to states for help, which is definitely necessary and a possibility that you should always look at. Plus, in particular, there's jurisprudence from the Federal Supreme Court that if you can rely on state funds, that there's no reason to claim force majeure. So you should look into what you can get from states in order to uphold your contract, if possible.
Mm.
And I think currently the best option I can think of is that you do negotiate with your respective counterparty to the contract you're in, and you agree with a reservation of any and all rights that you postpone whatever solution until there's more certainty about how this is going to develop further. So I think currently, I mean, in Germany there has been a change in our civil code. So essentially, there's a moratorium on obligations to perform, and the right to, for example, for lease agreements, the right to terminate based on non-payment is excluded. So there's a lot of changes to the general contract law by the lawmaker currently, and that kind of, I think, gives the possibility to both parties in these usually longer-term agreements to sit together and see how to get out of this together. Instead of one party trying to get out of the contract. I think the better way forward is to kind of sit together and try to negotiate a way that is bearable for both somehow.
Think about it. Yeah, try and think about it long term, as impossible and difficult that seems at the moment. And it might have to be a renegotiation after renegotiation after renegotiation, because as you said, it might take months. We have different legislation coming out all the time. So it might not be a let's sit down, renegotiate this, but it could be something that's just temporary where we adjust to what we know right now, and then we'll agree already
We'll
that
sit
we'll get
back down
together
once,
2-3 months and see and renegotiate that again, or have some contingency clauses in place. Make sure that things are staying flexible enough to deal with whatever might be coming our way.
Yeah. And I think what shouldn't be underestimated is the current environment of we're all in. Everybody's kind of locked down in their houses. Everybody's kind of without social contacts, at least physical closeness, which is, I think, difficult for everybody. So I think the negotiations are going to be more difficult than they usually are, because people are more on the edge than they would otherwise be, and everybody is under pressure. Everything has to happen fast. There's a lot of people who reasonably so are worried about their future. So I think it's a difficult negotiation situation. We're all in.
That's an important point, making sure to not allow that kind of pressure that you may now have on a business side to get yourself into deals that you later regret, but rather take it from a more calm down, logical perspective in a couple of weeks.
Try to,
hoping that that's an option. Your business will be okay until then, but not rush into anything right now. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for these wonderful insights. Thank you for taking the time. It's been great having you. All the best.
Thank you, Claudia.
Here. I'll
Thank
talk
you.
to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.